The Restoration period in English literature refers to the time between 1660 and 1700, characterized by significant cultural, political, and literary developments following the restoration of the monarchy under King Charles II. Here's an overview of the Restoration period in English literature. 1. Historical context. The Restoration began in 1660 with the return of King Charles II to the throne after the collapse of the Commonwealth under Oliver Cromwell and his son, Richard Cromwell. The period marked the end of the English Civil War and the Interregnum, a turbulent time of Republican rule. Charles II's reign was characterized by a restoration of the monarchy, the reestablishment of the Church of England, and a general sense of social and political stability. 2. Literary characteristics. Restoration literature was marked by a shift from the religious and political concerns of the Puritan era to a focus on wit, satire, and social commentary. The period saw the rise of the Restoration comedy, which featured witty dialogue, intricate plots, and satirical depictions of contemporary society. Drama flourished during this time, with playwrights like William Wycherley, William Congreve, and George Etheredge producing comedies of manners that satirized the manners and morals of the upper class. Poetry during the Restoration period was characterized by a departure from the metaphysical poetry of the previous era, favoring polished verse and classical forms influenced by French and Italian models. Prose literature saw the emergence of the novel as a popular literary form, with works like Aphra Behn's Oroonoko considered early examples of the novel in English literature. The 3. Key literary figures. John Dryden, often regarded as the leading literary figure of the period, dominated Restoration poetry and criticism with his neoclassical ideals and polished verse. Aphra Behn, one of the first professional female writers in English literature, was celebrated for her plays, novels, and poetry that challenged gender norms and explored themes of love and betrayal. Restoration playwrights like William Wycherley, William Congreve, and George Etheredge were known for their witty comedies of manners, which critiqued the hypocrisy and moral corruption of the aristocracy. 4. Legacy. The Restoration period left a lasting impact on English literature, shaping subsequent literary movements and genres. Restoration comedy influenced later forms of comedy and satire,
including the comedy of manners popular in the 18th century and the satirical novels of the 18th and 19th centuries. The period also laid the groundwork for the rise of the novel as a dominant literary form, with early novels like Oroonoko paving the way for the development of the English novel in the 18th century. Overall, the Restoration period in English literature was a time of innovation, creativity, and social commentary, characterized by its wit, satire, and exploration of human nature and society.
Here are 20 one-liner question answers about the Restoration period in English literature. 1. When did the Restoration period occur in English literature? Between 1660 and 1700. 2. Who was the monarch during the Restoration period? King Charles II. 3. What marked the beginning of the Restoration period? The return of Charles II to the throne in 1660. 4. What was the predominant literary form during this period? Restoration comedy. 5. Which playwright was known for his comedies of manners during the Restoration? William Congreve. 6. Who was a prominent female playwright and novelist of the Restoration period? Aphra Behn. 7. What was the primary focus of Restoration comedies? Satire of aristocratic society and manners. 8. Which poet dominated Restoration poetry and criticism? John Dryden. 9. What was the style of poetry favored during the Restoration? Polished verse influenced by classical forms. 10. Which novel is considered an early example of the English novel from this period? Oroonoko by Aphra Behn. 11. Who wrote the play The Country Wife, a famous Restoration comedy? William Wycherley. 12. What marked the end of the Restoration period in English literature? The death of King Charles II in 1685. 13. What cultural shift occurred during the Restoration period? A move away from Puritanism towards a more libertine culture. 14. What was the role of women in Restoration literature? Female playwrights and authors began to gain prominence and challenge traditional gender roles. 15. What was the significance of wit and satire in Restoration literature? They served as tools for social commentary and criticism. 16. What influenced Restoration poetry? Classical models, particularly French and Italian poetry. 17. What was the political backdrop of the Restoration period? The reestablishment of the monarchy after the English Civil War and the Interregnum. 18. What was the style of prose writing during this period? Prose was characterized by clarity and directness. 19. What themes were common in Restoration literature? Love, betrayal, social class, and morality. 20. What is the legacy of Restoration literature? It influenced later literary movements and genres, particularly comedy, satire, and the novel.